I got a question for you. Does it seem like to you that the news and the whole world is under a mass form of deception you've never seen before since you were a child? I'm 50 some years old now. And I know, as I've looked back at old news articles and stuff like that, that the news has propagandized people and lied to them. That's true, but never to the extent that we have seen now. It's like the entire world is under a season of deception. Now, for you guys who don't know anything about Christianity, there is a thing called Satan's short season, where it talks about Satan being released onto the world to deceive everyone. And so I have a theory, and in fact, it's a very provable theory, and that is that there's a lot of people who talk about lizard people and aliens controlling the world and stuff like that. And before I lose you here, it is very possible that if we're talking about aliens, we're talking about what we might call fallen angels. Take it for what you will. But it is possible that when we're talking about fallen angels or whatever, that they cannot, or there's not enough of them to interact with the entire world, and they're not necessarily on TV or on the news telling us information. I don't think they're running the banks and all of these sorts of things. These are real live people, because you can see them age and get old. The Queen of England, if she was like some people would say in conspiracies that she was a reptile or something like that, but we can see her when she was a child, and then she gets old and she died. So while there might be fallen angels or aliens, whatever you want to call them, helping people in positions of power to run this world, and while Satan might be the one behind controlling all this, which I believe he is, because most of what the disinformation, it's so intricate that I'm not sure without a supercomputer humans could orchestrate all of this. So what we're seeing is minions. These are what you call actual people carrying out this satanic deception on the world. And like it or not, the Christian church is at fault for this happening. So I'm not saying the Christian church is on the news or orchestrating the banking things and causing all of this. But in a sense it is, because Jesus established this church, or this group of good people, to be watchers and keep an eye out for anything bad or evil. And so what has happened is the church now has aligned itself with the most stringent opponents of Jesus on the planet. So no wonder why the church might not be able to see what's going on and stop it. Years ago, after September 2001, everyone thought the greatest world evil was all the Muslim countries. And in fact, if you actually really look at these countries, they looked a lot like the United States back in the 1970s, Iran and all these places. Very progressive, getting along just fine. And it wasn't until the introduction of this, state type of thing, where now the evidence is coming out that was created not by Muslims themselves. It was created by an enemy of the Muslims. You figure out who that might be. I'm not saying at all that I agree with anything from Islam, but I am saying that the evidence that is arising, declassified documents, crazy stuff like that, is showing that it wasn't an organic creation, and Islam and all this stuff didn't necessarily invent Hamas and all this radical terrorism and things. That has been a conflict between both the Catholic Church, i.e. the Jesuits, who actually turn out to be the same people who created Hamas, and they're not Christian people at all, I don't believe. So anyway, getting on with the point, All of this deception that is going on appears to be orchestrated and run by the same group of people. The more they have become entrenched into controlling and running our society, and what controls and runs a society is the music. And we can look back. I wrote in the book Reason to Believe, uncovering all the information about how much music can influence, or for good or bad, and destroy a society. It's like programming, like a computer program for the mind, and it imprints deeply. I say that because have you ever gotten really sad or had something happen in your life and you don't know where the lyrics come from, and all of a sudden this hook or this phrase from a song from 20 years ago or something starts just coming up out of your subconscious over and over, and it's most of the time supporting something negative that helps make you feel worse. And you're like, wow, I never listened to the lyrics at that time, but there they were implanted in my head. And for some people, when that happens, if they become entrenched too deeply in music, they literally become suicidal, or they act out things to harm other people. People who study things like black magic, psychological manipulation, and stuff like that, they know this. So if they control the music industry, Kanye was on to something, they could bring down a society or make it more easily controllable to take over. And if someone had a religious, mostly a secret, but known religious doctrine that it was their job to take over the world and everything belonged to them, it's possible they would push a music narrative, use banking, use money, to use deep psychological things to sway a society, to destroy it. Plato, Aristotle, they wrote about how music, they knew music far back in time could uplift or destroy a society. So the only people that don't seem to know about that is us in this modern time, in complete denial that bad music could have an influence on you. So that was all orchestrated. I go into that in many videos about the 1960s, early 1950s to 1960s, how they began orchestrating the downfall of America and really the world through using certain music types, rock and roll and stuff like that, to destroy America. That's one of the deceptions that started to occur. And people love their rock music so much because it has emotional ties and feelings that come up within your system. And it's addictive like a drug. And they become very defensive if you challenge that. I remember someone I knew years ago, and said they were a Christian person, deeply believed in God and stuff like that. But they were simultaneously entrenched extremely deep into rock music. It was embedded in their psyche. And the problem is, when you challenged them on that or brought it up, they became extremely defensive. Especially, I remember I was like, hey, do you know what that song's really about? Like singing this song, and it's about the dark side. And they became very defensive about that. They didn't want to think about it. So even for Christian people, this entrenchment of this music industry in a time of deception can be used. And we know that. Look at the whole hippie culture from the 1960s and 70s. Look at the punk rock movement. Look at the goth movement. And then look at like rap. How many lives has that destroyed? How many people have gotten shot or killed over the implantation and the image of all that stuff? And it turns out that it was orchestrated. Have you ever seen those videos where people try to speak out? Eventually they break their programming. I can't say the name of that on this platform because the same people control this platform as controlling the music industry. Excuse the noise, I'm going by some trucks here. So anyway, have you ever seen the videos of these people when they're down? Their mind programming breaks down and they suddenly realize what they've been put into, the things that are happening to them, types of trauma. And they try to speak out. And they try to tell the world, hey, look, this is going on. And immediately someone grabs them up. The news comes out and says, look how they've gone crazy. What happened to them? Are they on drugs? And the next thing, you disappear for a while. And their handlers pick them up. The whole free Britney Spears thing and all that. Of course, she was taken through the whole, look how many come out of Disney. That's weird. Starting back in the 1950s. Weird stuff going in there. Anyway, I can't tell you about that either here. You can look into it. So these people are using these celebrities, including sports. Now, here's a question for you. Sports was introduced. I did a video on this recently, and I talk about it in the book as well. Sports was introduced to those not on the inside. And people believe that sports is just something that people go and play, and you don't even think that maybe someone created a Roman Colosseum for modern times to keep people so entrenched and to take out their world frustration, all the stuff in this time of deception, and funnel it into watching sports, to take what they might feel angry or violent or take action or even get involved in politics or whatever might go on. They funneled it into sports. And I have seen the people who control the sports on hot mics and different things say that they invented it and that they don't watch sport at all. Their kids don't get involved in sports. They use it as a way to keep you distracted so you don't get involved in things to stop their world domination and takeover. While you're watching sports, what they say is probably about 9 years of the average person will spend watching sports. They will end up spending 8 hours a day, equivalent 9 years of their life. They'll sit watching basketball, watching football, and expending money, gambling, whatever. But they don't even realize it's addictive because there's so many of their friends. And this includes really wealthy people. People who went to college and now they're millionaires and they're so involved in their UVA games or Florida State or whatever. They don't even realize that they're entrapped in the system too. They think just everybody. It's normal now. Sports was invented to take the American man from his state of oppression, from taxes, from being angry at politics, from all the things that are going on in life where he's been made to feel helpless, and funnel it into a game where nothing ever gets changed. All that energy, all that tribal instinct, all that protective stuff, instead of protecting the future generations, instead of protecting their children, instead of protecting and making a better society, inventing. So invent something nowadays. Ask yourself a question. If you were to invent some kind of free energy device, a health device, anything that I remember back in the 1970s, where if you invented something, it was praised, the idea of somebody inventing something that could help someone. And you were encouraged for certain things like that. Now look at what the reality of certain things is. I saw a guy who invented a motor that would run on water. He proved it, he showed it, he made a video about it. A couple weeks later, what do you think happened to him? That's right, he was no longer around. Then there was a ex-police officer recently, a couple years ago. He also invented a machine, a motor that would run on water, some kind of hydrogen engine or something. And it actually would put out, the exhaust that came out was actually cleaner than the air that went in. He mysteriously died shortly after as well. So we went from a system where it was encouraged to benefit humanity and progress into the future and help each other out, to a place now of a time of deception. And whoever these people are, the minions of these fallen angels, the minions of these, it's really against all the principles of Christ, who promoted good and helping each other out and community. And we see it being isolated and focused onto a centralized group of people striving for world domination and power. And I say it's being done while they simultaneously claim to be a victim. Victim narcissism is what it's called, where you believe both you're a victim of the world and you also greater, smarter, and deserve to be the leader of the world. And no matter what, you can do anything you want to get into positions of power. That is victim narcissism on a grand scale. So music has been used against us. That's a fact. Sports are being used. That is a trigger that even deeply religious will tune out right away when I mention sports in my videos. They can't take that, but that's their issue. Sports, politics is the next one. We're taught, especially the word freedom. Now, I'm not sure whether Americans have been totally free ever. We certainly strived for it in younger days of America. And perhaps there was a time when there was lots of inventions and people started farms and went different places. There was a time of freedom. I believe that. But now we're taught, embedded, bombarded since school, on the news, talking about America the free. But America has more attorneys than any other country in the world. We have more laws than any other country in the world. We have more people incarcerated in prisons than any other country in the world. And people don't realize that our legal system, it used to be based off of common law. And during the slave trade and the commerce trade in the early 1800s, it was switched and merged together with maritime law. See, people had ships and trade and would come into dock and different things would go on. They had to make decisions fast because the ships had to leave. They had to, somebody came in and the cargo was damaged, there was insurance claims, whatever was going on at that time. Decisions had to be made fast. It was dealing with businesses. It was dealing with corporate structures, foreign nations. So maritime law was about dead entities, about this trade that was going on between something that wasn't alive, right? So what we have now is a merger of that time of deception. They took away common law, which was the freedom, like the basic tenets of the Bible, the basis of, it was about good and evil. They merged this, they knew what they were doing, and they turned every one of us in this great time of deception through birth certificates and anything like that. They turned us into non-living beings. That's why when you go to court, there's this thing called legalese. It's not English. You think you're saying so. That's why they want you to have an attorney, because you can't speak a foreign language called legalese. That's why you get screwed in divorce court. That's why when you go to court, you can't speak for yourself many of the times because you're actually saying something that sounds like common sense and you're incriminating yourself. And this was also introduced by the same people running the music industry, same people running Hollywood. They know this. This is why the court system and the legal system is literally evil. This is why they have to promote the idea of heroism within police departments and all of these things like that. Same with the military. And I don't have a problem with the military, but the policing system is a big problem because they are the protectors of maritime law and the deception that is taking place. They're not there to protect you. This will hurt a lot of your feelings. They're to protect the commerce system. That's what it's designed to protect and serve, not you, the commerce system. Now that will offend you if you have a son or somebody who serves in the police department. I see people dropping off already, but that's just a fact. It's a commerce system. That's why you have all these. Anyway, I could go on for that forever. They're not there to help you. So this entire system is multifaceted, and they have to use the media, which is owned by the same people serving this deceptive system, who are striving for power and control, and also victim narcissist. So you have to understand how this system is working and why, even as Christians, you remain confused and under a type of deception. You ever remember reading in the book of Revelation where it says, during a time of deception that even the elect would, if possible, would be deceived? Now this will hurt Christians' feelings because you've gone to church your entire life. Some of you might be like, I've been going to church for 30 years. You're wrong, Dan. Nobody's fooled me. I know what the Bible says. But a lot of times what's happened is someone has told you what the Bible says.